Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Rapid Dawn right here on Rapid Television. Yes, it is 9 o'clock, actually 9:03. And of course, it is time for the big conversation. Victor Ejoma was there earlier on to bring us a sporting updates, and I'm sure he talked to you guys about Arsenal's draw yesterday. We expected a win, but we couldn't win the game yesterday. And yeah, Chelsea, they got a whooping of their life yesterday as well. So for all Chelsea fans yesterday, one and no vest.
Immediately, I saw Vicky's update on WhatsApp that says Leverkusen won, Arsenal won.
Right.
See you at the Emirates next week. And I'm like, this one is going to have a lot to talk about today.
Very true, you know.
A lot to talk about today.
Just like he said earlier on, whilst he came in before his show, you know, he talked about the fact that, you know, there was no way we could get down to Leverkusen's home and then win them. But coming back to Emirates, we just might stand a chance. You know, it is possible. We still have the hope of lifting the trophy this season. You know, Gunners for life.
Gunners for life.
Well, my name is Victor. Okay.
And my name is Martha Alo. You already know this. It's the 9 o'clock hour, and it's basically conversations from on here. And for the 9 o'clock hour today, we will be doing like a wide spectrum of all the conversations that have been making waves in different aspects. Social aspect, the political aspect, economic aspect. All of these are indicators to the fact that you pretty much get the entire thing here this morning. So yes, we have a lot of stories to dive to and fro today. You just want to be a part of it. Majorly updates on other stories that we have probably expanded on before now. Very true.
And we are taking you from everyday life in Lagos to the big world events shaping our energy markets and global peace. And let's break down what's trending. And let's begin with the Lamata responding to a viral Lagos bus video. Of course, to recall that a video went viral showing long lines and few priority buses in Lagos, especially around the Ikorodu, with commuters saying that she waited hours without a bus. Now, there's a video to that effect. Let's go ahead and watch that video and then discuss on it.
You're asking us why do we use BRT? We use BRT because it's our Sunday. But BRT is not enough. See, people are even here fighting. People are here fighting. This is what keeps happening. Lagos State government, please do something about this. Do something about this situation. I'm making this video here in Ikorodu. Please provide buses for us. Lagos State, you can see how long this queue is. This queue is so long. So what time are we going to get to work? What time are we going to get to work? Please do something about this situation. Please do something about this situation. Do something about this situation. I'm not going to stop making these videos. Lagos State government, please do something. We cannot keep doing this. We cannot keep doing this. Lagos State government, I'm calling you out. Do something about this. Please provide buses for us. Provide buses for us, please. Don't make any video today. If you want to do content creator, go to garage. Go to garage. I'm telling you, if you make any video today, I'll sit your phone. I'm not joking. I'm not talking, yo. If you make any video today, I'm not talking. She said she was my phone. Ha. Why you holding my bag? Why you holding my bag? Why you holding my bag? Take your video. Take my video. You take the video. Take your video. I will make my video. There's no boss. I don't want me to make video. Do the video. I should go to garage. I should leave my alone. No, I should leave my alone. Go to garage. I don't understand. Go to garage. Force me now. Go to garage. I don't make your video. I make my video. Go to garage. Make your video. I make my video. Go to garage. You cannot stop me. You cannot stop me. You don't have that. You cannot stop me. You cannot stop me. I cannot make any video. Don't worry.
Various reactions to that video, of course. The first video, you saw the young lady there complaining about the fact that you stand at the BRT stations and it takes a lot of time before you can even get into the buses and then before you can move from one point to the other. The second video, you also saw that while she was still at the BRT station in a different day, some commuters refused her from making her video as it is. And of course, the truth is, this is not Herculean in Lagos State. I mean, this actually happens a lot. I have been in some of those BRT bus stations and I've got to stand there for a long time. I'm not the only one with that experience. maybe I didn't just have it as rough as this lady did have it. And of course, she has come out to speak up against the slow pace that happens in some of those bus stations in Lagos State.
You know what I dislike about Lagos State is how they have normalized suffering. I'm sorry if you're from Lagos State and you're watching, but most times when you talk about certain things that are not right, they'll be like, oh, this is Lagos. This is how it happens in Lagos. So because that's how it happens in Lagos, does that make it right in any way? And it's the same thing with certain people you find in different places. That's how we used to do it here. That's the quickest way for you to offer me from any setting at all. But you see, it is not normal for people to wait. I know we would say in developed countries, it happens where people have to wait for the bus, they have to catch up. But let me tell you, when the bus says it is here at 6 o'clock, it is there at 6 o'clock. And then when there are delays, there's a way they communicate those delays to say, oh, the bus is going to be late today. It's going to be 30 minutes late today. So maybe you can catch up on other things before you get there. Time is currency. Time is money. You cannot waste people. And you see, this is why most organizations refuse to pay hourly. Where you say, okay, when I work hourly, you pay me hourly. Because they like to waste people's time in this part of the world. Imagine that I'm going out to work for the day's daily bread, right? And I go out and I spend 5 hours at the bus station. How many is left for me to work? You see, so if I'm working on an hourly basis, that is a complete waste of my time. Because 5 hours that I could have, productive hours that I could have used to get money, I have used to wait at the bus stop. So when we try to make excuses to say, oh, in other countries, it actually does happen. Yes, it does happen. But there's a system that helps you, like, you know when to be there.
Exactly. That's
you know when
that you follow.
Exactly.
Departure time is something that should be a thing.
Exactly.
But rarely we have it in this part of the world.
We don't have departure time, arrival time, even though I commend what that service is trying to address. Okay, there's so much traffic in Lagos. The BRT has its own lane, so it cuts the most part of the journey for you, which is why a lot of people opt for using the BRT in Lagos, regardless of the fact that they're mobile or not. But I mean, there has to be an upgrade to that system. Hundreds of people waiting to get on the bus. And then you see, my problem also with Nigerians is the fact that the average Nigerian with an average position looks for a way to oppress their fellow Nigerian. Because tell me why I have the right to speech, I have the right to do whatever it is I want to do. In fact, some have argued that I don't want my face to be on camera. It is not, you are not breaking any law here in Nigeria. This is Nigeria. You are not in Nigeria. You can videograph and photograph. You are not breaking any rule. But in other countries that you cannot photograph someone without their consent, they take all of these rules seriously as they consider it an infringement of the right of the person that you are videographing or photographing without their consent. But there are ways to say it. So because you are Lamata now, you can now hit anybody you want and get away with it. So the average Nigerian at the gate wants to show you that he has authority there. The one that is at the fuel station, have you gone to a fuel station where you are trying to talk and the person just frowns their face? Wait for your turn, madam. I can't talk now.
And that's the pump attendant.
That's the problem. That's a problem. The average person wants to exercise authority over the average person. But when the government does it to you, it is a problem. But when you do it to your fellow citizen, it is not a problem. We need to act right, as a matter of fact.
And that's what I keep saying. When you give a person power, that's when you get to actually know who the person truly is. And when we talk about corruption in this part of the world, many times we keep saying the fact that, or talking about the fact that the people that are in the position of authority, they were once citizens like us. They were integrated in the society before they got voted or elected into office, and then they began to act the way they are acting. Now, give a normal Nigerian that same opportunity, and you just might be amazed what the person can do in that particular regards. However, still talking about this particular video clip that went viral online, the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, Lamata, denied harassing the woman, saying that staff were only enforcing privacy and safety rules and explaining delays were due to traffic and bus turnaround times. Lamata also said that efforts are ongoing right now to improve bus services and add more buses to meet demand. We can see the press release, of course, right there on your screen. Just to read a few lines and all of that, it said the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority is aware of the videos currently circulating online posted by at that skinned Ella, highlighting the challenges faced by commuters and a specific encounter with a bus supervisor We appreciate the feedback provided as it helps strengthen our regulatory oversight and improve service delivery across regulated public transport system. Of course, that was the response coming from Lamata. We do hope, of course, that they can get to provide more BRT buses to ensure that commuters can actually commute without delay. Well, away from that particular story, we see that the Senate has confirmed Taiwo Oyedele as Minister of State for Finance. During his screening, Senate President Godswill Akpabio said that his experience will help Nigeria manage money better. Now, we have a video where Taiwo Oyedele was also being questioned, by the Senate. Let's go ahead and watch that video and hear some of the things and ideas that Taiwo Oyedele has for the Ministry of Finance.
Revenue number and the budget and how you finance the deficit. It's also important that we don't lose sight of those capital projects in particular. I hold the view that if you're trying to build a road that you could have done in 1 year, but you did it in 10 years, that's 9 extra years wasted, for which Nigeria did not get maximum value for that investment. And we even end up with variations and all of that. So I believe this is something that is within our control and we should be able to do it. The third and the last question is from the distinguished Senator Yahaya Abdullahi, I hope I got that right, who was making the point about Mr. President of the country haven't done a lot to stabilize our economy, particularly from the monetary side. And then his point is, what are we going to do differently in my role on the fiscal side beyond tax? So essentially, the way we see this, the way I see this is that we have to be intentional about trying to drive disinflationary growth. How does that work? From the fiscal side, we've seen increase in revenue of the government as a result of the reforms around subsidy removal as well as naira flotation. Now, if you get more revenue because you take out subsidy, it's actually a transfer from the people to the government. So that sacrifices that the people make, the only way we can make it worthwhile is to spend that money in the areas of priority to them. And they could be as basic as road from the farm to the warehouse, factory, and the market. And you see the impact on the people almost immediately. Health center, schools. So the spending is one area we want to prioritize, both at the federal government level, but also working with the sub-national. We've actually started this conversation. I was invited to the National Economic Council retreat about 2 weeks ago, and these were some of the conversations we've had. So we believe that government can improve how we spend wisely, productively, and to help address issues around inflation. I have 2 very important examples I want to give. So this is not academic. If you think about it, the more room we can create to generate revenue and find the cash to fund our activities, the better for us. If you look at Nigeria's Eurobond, we have somewhere around $18.5 billion Eurobond. In the next 5 years, we have about $7 billion maturing. So which means in 5 years, we need to find $7 billion. But here's the good news. The rate, the yield on those $7 billion worth is now about 20% less than when we issued them. In other words, just imagine that we issue $7 billion to refinance the one that is falling due. We save ourselves from looking for $7 billion in the next 5 years. The amount we use to service the debt on a yearly basis falls by hundreds of millions of dollars. So you win in 2 dimensions. And imagine channeling all of that into productive capital expenditure. The impact will be significant.
Answering questions as well as was being grilled and interviewed for the confirmation of being the Minister of State for Finance here in Nigeria. I've got to recall that he was in charge of the tax reform that took effect from January 4th, 2026. And of course, many Nigerians have had lots of questions to ask about that particular reform. Now he is the Minister of State for Finance here in Nigeria, and he has quite some ideas that he shared that he's going to be doing in that particular ministry. Now the question goes, are we going to be seeing an improvement in the Nigeria's economy now that Taiwo Oyedele has now been confirmed as the Minister of State for Finance? So these are questions that we are going to get answers to just as it begins to function as well.
And you know, if you were to ask me that question directly, I'll tell you yes, as a matter of fact. And I'll tell you why my answer is yes. Starting from the basics, right? And for an organization, let's do a wider spectrum.
Okay.
In an organization, you can almost determine the success of that organization by the quality of staff members that are hired in the organization. One, because of their experience. Two, because of their track records. Three, because of their results. So when you hire a person, you most likely are able to tell what the outcome of that person will be based on these three levels. And for Taiwo Oyedele, he has served in multi-million-dollar companies, PwC, for example. Right. He has served as head in these companies. He has led global organization and taxing system. In fact, he's one of Nigeria's finest people when it comes to taxation and everything related to that. So, of course, he has the experience. He has the knowledge, he has the trajectory. Now, look at the tax reform, which started off in implementation in January, on the 1st of January, 2026. He moved the tax to GDP ratio. You know, Nigeria currently has one of the lowest tax to GDP ratio in the world, forcing heavy reliance on borrowing and all of that. And he has studied the problem and he has given the solution through that interview. You can see the disparity between him and many other people who have stood in that dock to answer questions relating to the ministries that they will now be occupying. This is not a person who comes with stating the problem alone. He comes with solutions, palpable solutions. And that's why I like when he answered the questions, he didn't throw it just open to them. He said, okay, let me give you examples as how this will be implemented. He talked about Eurobonds. He talked about how this tax that is being collected from citizens pay would be now used and recirculated into the system to improve the lives of Nigerians. This is a person that is result-oriented, that is not just goal-oriented, it's result-oriented. It's one thing to have the knowledge. It's another thing to have the structure and the strategy to implement the knowledge to give you results. I was talking about his trajectory when he was head of the tax reform system. He was able to increase Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio from about 10 to towards 18%, which amounted to billions of naira, trillions rather, of naira, the last time we had that conversation. So yes, I love the fact that, in fact, if you don't give the president kudos for anything at all, give him kudos for his ability to be able to spotlight the people who have the requisite knowledge to handle certain ministries. I won't say that for all the ministries though, but the most recent nominations that he has made, first for the IGP and secondly for the Minister of State for Finance, I would give him a very big kudos for that, because these are people that have very commendable trajectories as regards the implementation of the work or the office that they are now being appointed or nominated to serving. So yes.
Well, however, he's confirmed now, so he can be referred to as the Minister of State.
The Minister of State for Finance. Absolutely.
Basically. But again, we just hope that we get to see these results actually being translated into the lives of the everyday Nigerians.
Absolutely.
So. Let's take a quick travel down to the United States, where we see that the U.S. has now made a move to stabilize world oil markets because of the ongoing conflict involving the U.S., Israel, and Iran. Oil prices have jumped around the world, especially here in Nigeria. I mean, the price of PMS has skyrocketed so much that people are now paying higher for transportation. And some are saying, if you get onto the market, the price of goods and some commodities have also increased. Well, in response, the United States announced it would release 172 million barrels of oil from its strategic petroleum reserve. Well, let's get to hear the President of the United States of America make that statement.
I'm pleased to report that earlier today, the International Energy Agency agreed to coordinate the release of a record 400 million barrels of oil from various national petroleum reserves around the world, which will substantially reduce the oil prices as we end this threat to America and this threat to the world. We don't want to leave early, do we? We got to finish the job, right? Well, it's only good if you win. You know, you can only do. And we've won. Let me tell you, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over.
Well, of course, that is President Donald Trump making that statement. And of course, it is also part of a bigger move with the International Energy Agency, you know, which of course they also agreed to release about 400 million barrels in total, which is the largest emergency release ever to calm oil prices down. Now, of course, we know that when oil is in short supply or prices go too high, countries can tap reserve stocks to ease the shock for everyday fuel buyers. And maybe that is what the United States of America is trying to do at this point in time, with the president making that statement, releasing or tapping into 170 million barrels per day. You know, still record that laughter. Still record that the Strait of Hormuz is not at this point in time not favorable right now. There's still been the back and forth between the United States of America, Iran, Israel, all of them still struggling to pass their product through that particular Strait of Hormuz. But of course, 172 million barrels of oil from strategic petroleum reserve. That's what the United States of America has just approved.
The truth of the matter is, even though Washington claims strategic success, Iran has not considered defeat.
Not yet.
And the situation is still very volatile because take a look at this. We said that shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which normally carries about 20% of the world's oil supply, has dropped sharply because of the close of that Strait of Hormuz. And the truth is, Iran has also said that any vessel that passes through there will be destroyed. You know, but the U.S. has said those vessels will be accompanied by a number. I think he gave a specific number of security personnel, Marines, and what have you, that will accompany that vessel from there to other parts of Europe that have been touched by the volatility of the oil markets and everything that is happening within there. But the 400 barrels international emergency was approved, and is a historic release, as a matter of fact. And the United States alone plans to release about 172 million barrels from its strategic petroleum reserves. And this is the largest coordinated emergency oil release ever, exceeding the amount released during the Russia-Ukraine energy crisis, which we also saw this kind of I'm at loss for what to call it. This impact, economic impact, particularly in the oil sector. Many other countries are experiencing increase in the price of fuel. In Nigeria, we have Dangote increased to 1,300. You know, no, 1,100 or so, because of all the whole processes that it gets to get into other parts of the country, has been increased to 1,300. Black market now sells at 1,500 here in the FCT. I don't know about other parts of Nigeria, but in the FCT it sells as 1,500. So all these trends is as a result of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Now the question is, this 400 million or 400 barrels that was released, is it 400 million? 400 million barrels emergency release by the United States. Where can it get to? Because 20% of the oil reserve generally passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which supplies to all three coordinates around Iran and around that Strait of Hormuz. What can 400 million barrels actually do? This morning on the papers, we also did hear about the fear of monopolizing the market, because you would see that the market, Dangote monopolizing the market, you'd see that to a large extent he has determined the price of fuel in Nigeria in the last couple of weeks. In the first 3 days, we had a 105 naira increase to the price of fuel. After that, 1 week later, we saw about 200 naira increase to the price of fuel. So, I mean, it calls for concern, because one man gets to dictate the entire scene, especially when it comes to oil and gas. It is dangerous.
If you look at it, he's not particularly deciding or dictating it. It's coming from the effect. As a matter of fact,
no, it's coming from the effect, but he is the one who. Look at it from before you go on, who else would determine an increase right now in Nigeria that it will hold any?
Well, realistically, it's supposed to be the NNPCL, right? Which, of course,
I mean, do they have refineries? They have just 7% of whatever goes on in Dangote refineries.
We do. NNPC do have refineries in Nigeria, but
are they functional?
Not functional. That's what it is.
Exactly.
And so if you look at it, Dangote actually has about 90% in the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you have 90 and I have 5, who is the bigger person?
Well, they are the bigger person.
I get to dictate what happens in the market.
The whole effect comes from the fact that now we've seen the Middle East, Middle East war, which is affecting the global market.
Absolutely.
You know, if you get onto UK, they are queues in their fuel stations as we speak right now. We saw videos very recently where people were also complaining about that particular effect and impact as it is. And so the increase right now coming from Dangote is because this is something that's also impacted the business as it is. Do recall, I think 2 days ago they tried to even reduce the price. They reduced it by 100 naira. And that was when the international market was still selling for about $88 to about $100 per
now
barrel.
It's about Brent crude surge about $100
$100
per barrel. And I think that this morning it had increased to about 119 or something of the sort.
And so that's why the whole price is fluctuating as it is.
Yeah.
And there's still a fear that is to come, because in our next story we're still going to highlight what Iran is saying, you know, regarding that, trying to say to everyone around the world to brace up. And these are things that actually even cause a lot of concern. The energy market right now, it's very volatile. I mean, the oil and gas sector is also very volatile as we speak, which has affected the prices of everything in the market. Not just Nigeria, but the global space. How long is this going to last? Because from the look of things, both Iran, both the United States of America, both Israel, you know, they are all not ready to share their swords.
They are not ready, but they are all losing.
That's what it is.
They're all losing.
So, U.S. thinks that they have what it takes to sustain the war.
The U.S. war efforts reportedly cost about $11 billion in the first week alone.
Yeah.
And we're getting into 2 weeks. That means you have spent about $22 billion.
Right.
For a war that you started based on preemption.
Yeah.
You said you preempt that Iran was going to attack you. Iran has not even done anything. You struck. And remember when we had an analyst here, he talked about the cost of the interception of the drone fighter jets or whatever it is that Iran was sending over. So Iran will be spending about $10,000 to send that drone to you. And you are spending about $100,000 to neutralize it.
Yeah.
Who spends more? So economically, the U.S. will definitely spend more to curtail whatever is going on in the Middle East. Tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz nearly stopped. Vessels were destroyed, I think, in the first week of whatever had happened. But the truth of the matter is, it is too early to decide that you have gotten victory, as Donald Trump is suggesting. These people are not backing down. You are also not backing down. It's costing you. For the U.S., we talked about $11 billion right now. For Israel, you remember we talked about how much they spend for pilgrimage, or how much they get for pilgrimage, about $2 to $4 billion every year. And right now, we're supposed to be that season where people will travel to Israel.
Well, no one is traveling.
No one is traveling. So you are losing $3 to $4 billion. Everybody is going to feel the heat of it. Of course, major infrastructure in Iran has been hit. People have been killed here and there. But all 3 countries will share in the fertility that will exist in this war, and that's the truth about the matter. Of
course, we have lots of conversation regarding this particular matter, but right now we'll go on a break, and we'll come back with that straight, even go deeper into the conversation that we have for you from Iran, and of course also to China. Do stay with us. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Rapid Done right here on Rapid Television, and of course we've been giving you stories and updates, for us, updates of the stories rather that have been on the headlines, especially within this week. And moving on, let's take you to Iran, as Iran's military spokesperson said that oil prices could go as high as $200 per barrel if the conflict continues, because energy markets depend on peace in the region. But we know that oil prices have already spiked close to nearly $120 per barrel at some points due to disruptions in the Straits of Hormuz, which of course is a key route for nearly 1 in every 5 barrels of oil shipped worldwide. And let's go ahead and watch the Iranian spokesperson making that statement.
شما باید بدانید که نخواهید توانست قیمت نفت و انرژی را با تنفس مصنوعی پایین بیاورید که با گسترش جنگ در منطقه اعلام کردیم منتظر بشکه‌ای $200 باشید، چون قیمت نفت تابع امنیت در منطقه است که منشأ ناامنی شما هستید.
Well, yeah, that was of course transcribed. You could read the things that he was saying, talking about the fact that the entire world has got to brace up, because the price of fuel or crude basically might increase to $200 per barrel if the conflict continues. Again, we told you earlier on that it's already selling between $118 to $120 per barrel due to the disruption that is already going on in the Strait of Hormuz right now. And yes, the U.S. Coming up to say, hey, 170 million barrels, of course, has already been, they've approved that for an emergency reserve. That is one measure that the U.S. has taken. But globally, some key countries basically have agreed to release about 400 million barrels, all using this for maybe just a safe landing as it is. But again, $200 per barrel, that is going to take a very strong toll, not just on African countries, but to the world at large.
Well, Iran has said, like you said, Iran has said the world should brace up.
Yeah.
Especially because you know what they did with the Strait of Hormuz, where the road, I feel like we have flogged that a lot. Right, the road has been short, the disruptions and what have you. So they said, and according to them, they have launched, not according to them, according to the actions we have seen unfold in the last couple of days, they have launched missile and drone strikes across the region. Yeah. And the Iranian forces have targeted shipping, Gulf oil infrastructure, and US bases, which also defines the scarcity we now experience in the oil and gas sector. Also, Iran has also warned oil prices will spike, as you said, $200 per barrel if the conflict escalates further. I think right now, I would say that Iran sits at a very instrumental place in this crisis. Not instrumental, they sit at a very advantage place on the table, because unlike, yes, we have, and I'll tell you why, we have different analysts think different things, saying that okay, the United States also have some power, world power, US can detect this, that, but I also just told you how much the US loses to this crisis, just how much they have lost in just 1 week. Israel, we have been able to also spotlight some of the losses that have been experienced for Israel throughout this crisis. But now, no matter what happens, that Strait of Hormuz is a very key route to which this crude and can pass through from that country to different other parts of the world. If that place remains closed, the crisis will remain. The escalation will also remain. Remember when we had an analyst, I asked a question. In the 90s, we had this kind of crisis in the Middle East. We saw the exact same consequence of that crisis to different parts of the world, including Nigeria. During the Ukraine-Israel war, we also saw some level of this. But anytime there is crisis in the Middle East, we experience this level of economic shock, because of the crisis there. And the question I asked then was, couldn't we have found a better route in which we can transport this crude? Forget about the Strait of Hormuz. Transport this crude to other parts that would not experience the shock or would not be vulnerable to this crisis as much as we can. And he said, no matter the route you find, the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the key routes that you have to pass through. 20% of the world or global oil passes through that route. So no matter what happens, they hold the key there. I don't know how the US want to intercept them, force them to open that strait to ensure that activities of crude continue to. But if you ask me, that key alone that they have is very instrumental to ending these economic shocks that we experience, because I don't think the 400 million barrels would do anything as much. Think about how much Dangote exports all the time. Think about how much we expend here in Nigeria. Remember, he pledged to give 60% of his refined oil here in Nigeria. 40% goes to export. So look at the amount of, I will not say crude, as we refine to PMS and what have you, we use to diesel and all that. Look at how much we use here, let alone other parts of the world. So I think that because of that alone, they hold a very key. How much are you buying gas now? You're not ignorant of exactly gas. If you're using public transport, it is increased now from at least 700 to 1,000 naira for your basic transport for one stop. If you're using boats now or other e-hailing services you'd be spending, or you'd experience at least 1,500 to 2,000 increase on the cost of your transportation. So you see, if that place just opens now, this whole shaking of FX markets, Naira is fluctuating. When the crisis started, it was about 1,300, a little over 1,300 Naira per dollar. Right now, it's about 1,415 Naira per dollar. So our Naira keeps depreciating yet again. So if that opens, I believe that would be okay. The most part. So that's why I say they hold a very instrumental position in this crisis.
However, China is talking peace, right? Of course, they've urged all sides to stop fighting and return to talks, warning that ongoing attacks and instability in the Gulf will hurt peace and global markets, which of course we've seen happen. Well, it's a good thing that we're seeing a particular country trying to call every other country together to say, come on, let's all go back to talks and see how we can all make peace at this point in time. But let's get to listen or watch the Chinese government official make that statement.
China does not agree with the attacks on Gulf states and condemns all indiscriminate attacks on civilians and non-military targets. The urgent task is to immediately cease military operations and prevent further expansion of the conflict. The solution lies in returning to dialogue and negotiation as soon as possible and striving to restore peace. The fundamental solution is to jointly return to the right track of abiding by international law and the basic norms of international relations.
Will they all come together and have
that dialogue?
Will they have a dialogue? Will there be peace? Well, that we will find that in the coming days or in the coming weeks.
Let's look a bit into Nigeria now, because we have talked about all other countries a little extensively. But in Nigeria, we know that the CSW has started already. They are one day in. It's a 10 days event that talks about the how do we call it? It's just basically to advance the rights of women. I'm trying to get that completely. Now, women are supposed to be nominated. Before we even talk about women's nomination, last year, when the entire case between Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan and the Senate President Godswill Akpabio started off, the allegations of sexual assault and all of that, Natasha was at the Commission of State on the Status of Women, which is a principal global intergovernmental body dedicated exclusively to promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. That was where she pleaded her case, which I think is one of the reasons that angered the Senate President Godswill Akpabio. She had multiple suits filed against her, to that effect. Now, the CSW has started again this year in New York. And according to Natasha, she was called by a certain Becky who works at the office of the Minister of Women Affairs, and she was asked to submit a passport as a delegate to represent Nigeria at the CSW. And according to her, she got that message. 3 hours later, she responded, because that was when she only got to get the message, sent her passport over, and immediately she sent the passport. This same Becky now told her that she submitted the passport late, which means that she's no longer going to be attending the CSW. And mind you, you know that there would be a follow-up question as to how far she has come in the case against herself and the Senate President Godswill Akpabio. And thankfully, all the suits filed against her has been withdrawn, which is an update that the women at the CSW would most likely want to catch up on to find out how far she has come with the case. However, there was a plenary, a sitting also that had, the Minister of Women Affairs was not present, but Ireti Kingibe, who was the head of the committee, who was the chair of the committee that was responsible for these delegations and for what have you regarding the CSW. Now, Ireti Kingibe, Natasha rather, pointed out what had happened, and she said, if we are saying, she has always heard that women are women's problem, she didn't want to believe it. But if just 4 of them that are representing women in the Senate cannot unite and do something, it is very unfortunate, because what becomes of the larger society, and what reflection or what picture does that paint for other women in the larger society? Right. Now, she said this, and Ireti now responded by saying, Natasha, I made sure I nominated you because I was sure that you would want to attend. And she's not aware of Becky's, you remember Becky now, who works in the Ministry of Women Affairs, who now said that Natasha submitted her passport late and would not be going to the CSW anymore. Ireti said she never sent anybody. She nominated Natasha. And if Natasha would not be going to the CSW, she would also not be going. Shortly after that, we see a letter that is addressed to Natasha on the 5th of March, the exact day that the CSW convention or whatever was supposed to start, saying that she was not nominated, only Ireti Kingibe, and a male senator was nominated to represent women at the CSW. Big question. Why is a man nominated to represent women in at the CSW? You know, because there are 4 women. There's just 4 women in the National Assembly. All 4 of them could have been nominated. I see no reason a man should be. Why is a man representing women to talk about the problems of women?
Where we have female voices in Nigeria.
Who could have done that? Right. You see. So the whole crisis is more about, when I say I'm being marginalized, you guys say I'm not being marginalized. But all of this that you have done only proves one thing. You are sidelining me from duties that are at the core of my responsibility as a senator representing my people, and not just my people, representing women, women's representation in the National Assembly. It's been a long ride. The CSW has started already. There are 2 days in. It's a 10 days event. I don't know if she will also be eventually nominated to meet up with at least 5 days. But I mean, updates to that story will definitely be provided before the week runs out.
Definitely, we'll keep you updated on that particular story, and we do hope that all of this can be sorted out as much as possible. Well, of course, that being said, this is all we're going to be taking on to this edition of Rapid On. Thank you so much for being with us. Do remember that you can follow us on social media pages across all platforms at Rapid TV, and they can get to rewatch all our episodes on our YouTube platform at Official Rapid TV. And not to worry, wherever you are in the world, you can watch us live using our website, www.arabianradiotv.com. My name is Victor RK.
My name is Martha Alu. I will see you tomorrow, or we will see you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow.